Do you want to know how to make this type of lead? All right, it all starts with this. Wah. All right, so as you can hear, the main vocal that I'm using is straight garbage. So, I mean, if you use a better vocal, you can get even closer to the actual Skrillex sound. But yeah, what you do with it is, first of all, you place it in a sampler. Now, if you're not using Ableton, of course, you can use like Harmor. You can use a different array of options. I'm sure you can extrapolate what I'm going to say to your DAW. So I place it on sampler. And let's take out all the effects first. All right, we've taken out all the effects pretty much. And this is how it sounds now. All right, so first of all, as you could hear, there was a reverb type effect that was created through a parallel send track. So I send the vocals to the send track, and then with an automation, I automate with an utility, I basically automate the volume of the reverb up and down to create that effect. It's pretty simple. Now, as you can see, there are 2 tracks for the vocals, which is kind of weird, it might seem, but it is because just the first bar has a different type of modulation on the voice than this next bar. So it was just to create 2 different modulations in the envelopes of the sampler. That's all. So in the first one, I mean, both are the same except for the pitch envelope and a couple more things. So let's watch the first one. As you can see, the sample is here, my shit vocal. And what I do is with these 2 flags, I pull them together, and that's gonna create a loop with the sustain mode, the double arrow towards the right. That's gonna create a loop that between the flags, the sound is gonna repeat until I release the key, and then the release mode is the single bar, the single arrow. So it's gonna loop, and when I release, it's gonna play the rest of the sound, okay? So that's why I can sustain the note for as long as I want, pretty much. So you gotta play with the distance of the flags to find out where it sounds, better, pretty much. You also have to figure out kind of what note you're making with your voice. Preferably, you're gonna put auto-tune or Melodyne on your voice to make sure it's like a set note for sure. And then with this, you can again just change up the root key and mess with the MIDI clip to get the right notes. Now, in the pitch oscillation, I put some FM, but it's not doing much really. It's just at minus 42 dB. It was just because in the Skrillex track, the voice sounds so distorted and weird that I just wanted to add some weirdness to it. But you can definitely get away with not doing this specifically and just add distortion and other type of weirdness again. But the pitch envelope is pretty important. So what I do with the pitch envelope, as you can see in the shape, is it's gonna go up. So it's gonna start lower, it's gonna go up, then sustain, and then when I release, it's gonna go down again. That's gonna create like a whoa, that kind of modulation. So that's that. There's also glide with Portamento that, I mean, you can turn glide off. It's pointless. There's not even glide. And the volume envelope is fairly important as well, because you need to make sure that the release is somewhat long, because you have to actually be able to hear the note release to hear the pitch go down at the end of the note. And also because when you release the note, it's going to play this part of the sample. So the other one is pretty much the same, except it doesn't have this pitching up kind of sound. That's it. Now, for the effects, I ran this, as you can see, I grouped them together and I ran them through an effect chain. So right now it sounds like this. And what I do is pretty much EQ the hell out of it, because right now the vocal you hear, even if my original vocal was an ah sound, when I pitch it up, that peak is gonna move to the right. So instead of an ah, it sounds like an e, like we e. So to counteract that, I create a huge peak around the 2K frequency because that's more or less where the ah sound lays for this sound specifically. So as you can hear right now, when I put this EQ, it's gonna sound more wonky and also more of an ah sound, more open. Then I use serum effects with a dimension expander. This is because it more or less sounds like there's a more than one voice, and probably maybe there actually is in the original song, because if he's using the original vocals from Pendulum, he might be able to find the actual chorus with multiple voices. But I just did it with the hyper in Serum Effects. I create 7 voices and more or less in the middle mix, and just play with the rate on the detune. That makes it sound like this. Then I just saturate it and compress it like hell. And now there's not a scientific approach to this. I just test saturation. I test multiband compression. The compression, I'm gonna get to it, because that is a pretty, I had something specific in mind with it. But with this, I just slap distortion and compression on it. That makes it sound really fucking bad. I will admit that. But with the compression, these things create a lot of peaks, weird peaks and shit. So with this compressor, I just kind of remove some peaks out of the zone. And then there's some more EQ, just get rid of some frequencies here. Get rid of a peak here that I was hearing. And just some, some reverb. Okay, so the next thing is to add a super saw. Okay, the sound has multiple layers, and one of them is a super saw. Now, it's not exactly a super saw, but it's pretty close. So what I do for this is I create this type of shape by grabbing a saw, actually, and just bending it until it's a bit less sharp. It's kind of a smoother than a saw wave. And I put 12 voices on it. I mean, you can put like 16 voices or 10 voices. And modulate, of course, the volume with this shape, and with a macro I'm gonna actually, let's see, do the pa 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 pa. When this goes up, the speed of the macro, as you can see right here, goes up. So okay, and then I run that through a filter, a low pass filter, because it sounds a little smoother than a saw wave. So that's pretty much it. And then I compress it a bit, and that's it. It's not a very complex sound. Now, of course, you have to, where is it? You have to modulate the voice with the same type of modulation. So what you do is I pretty much slap a utility on it and modulate the gain. So the volume goes to 0 dB and to minus infinite dB. And that's how I create the modulation. And I make sure that it's the actual rhythm of the song. Now it's gonna sound like this. Wait, where's my super sub here? And now what I do is I saturate them together and again compress them pretty much like I did with the vocal itself, but I'm gonna do them together to blend them, you know? Again, there's not much science in this. It's just how I felt the correct one was. And as you can see here, there's a modulation, an automation in which I turn down the gain when the note ends. This is because I want to cut all the reverb, all the release, everything. I want to cut everything out to make a very glitchy stop on the sound. So every time the note stops, it glitches out of existence. And then some EQ to, to get it sounding a little bit better. All right, so that's more or less the lead. And what you do next is you add a sub. Now the sub is a really simple thing to create. You basically get either a smooth square and you turn the wavetable position way down and then you EQ the hell out of it. But you can pretty much do it with a sine wave. You just grab a sine wave, turn the pitch way down, and then you distort it, okay? So again, you could do a sine wave here and then distort the shit out of it. And obviously you can distort it until it becomes something other than a sub, right? But just a little bit of distortion. And it's this particular sounds like this. And it's, instead of modulating the sound, I actually play the MIDI notes with the rhythm in mind. Now, as you could hear, the notes on every layer of the sound are different. So it's actually a chord made out of different sounds. And the whole sound sounds more or less like this. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you like this sound, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can receive notifications when I create more sounds like this. And if you want to be able to create great mixes, masters, sound design, great songs, great composition, everything, I have a coaching service that you can check out in the description below, and it's going to be great. So make sure to check that out. So yeah guys, see you next time.